Hello, everyone. Let's continue on with A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tillie Cole. Chapter 10, Clasped Hands and Awakened Dreams. From the perspective of Rune. I woke to Poppy staring up at me. Hey, said Poppy. She smiled and nuzzled further into my chest. I let my hands wander through her hair before tucking my hands under her arms, pulling her up until she lay above me, her mouth opposite mine. Morning, I replied, then pressed my lips against hers. Poppy sighed into my mouth as her lips parted and worked against my own. When I pulled back, she glanced out the window and said, We missed the sunrise. I nodded, but when she looked back at me, her expression didn't show any sadness. Instead, she kissed my cheek and admitted, I think I'd trade all the sunrises if it meant I got to wake up like this, with you. My chest concaved at those words. Taking her by surprise, I flipped her on her back, hovering over where she lay. Poppy giggled as I trapped her hands on the pillow above her head. I scowled. Poppy tried unsuccessfully to stop her laughter. Her cheeks were pink with excitement. Needing to kiss her more than breathe, I did. I released Poppy's hands and she grasped my hair. Her laugh began to fade as the kiss grew deeper, and then there was a loud knock on the door. We froze, our lips still joined, and our eyes wide open. Poppy, time to get up, sweetheart. Poppy's daddy's voice drifted into the room. I could feel Poppy's heart racing, echoing through my chest, flushed against hers. Poppy shifted her head to the side, breaking the kiss. I'm awake, she shouted back. We didn't dare move until we heard her daddy walking away from the door. Poppy's eyes were huge when she faced me again. Oh my God, she whispered, bursting into a fresh set of giggles. Shaking my head, I rolled to the side of the bed, grabbing my shirt off the floor. As I pulled the black material over my head, Poppy's hands landed on my shoulders from behind. She sighed. We slept too late this morning. We almost got caught. It won't happen again, I said, not wanting her to have any excuse to end this. I had to be with her at night. I had to. Nothing happened. We kissed. We slept. That was enough for me. Poppy nodded in agreement, but when her chin rested on my shoulder, her arms wrapping around my waist, she said, I liked it. She laughed again, and I turned my head slightly, catching the bright look on her face. She nodded playfully. Poppy sat back and took my hand and pressed it over her heart. It was beating fast. It made me feel alive. Laughing at her, I shook my head. You're crazy. Standing up, I slid on my boots. Poppy sat back on her bed. You know, I've never done anything naughty or bad before, Rune. I'm a good girl, I suppose. I frowned at the thought of corrupting her, but Poppy leaned forward and said it was fun. I pushed my hair back from my face and leaned down over the bed and gave her one last kiss, soft and sweet. Rune Christiansen, maybe I'll like this bad boy side to you after all. You're sure gonna make the next few months entertaining, she sighed dramatically. Sweet kisses and trouble-making antics. I'm in. As I made my way to the window, I heard Poppy move behind me. Just as I went to sneak out of her window, I glanced back. Poppy was filling out 2 blank hearts from her jar. I allowed myself to watch as she smiled at whatever she was writing. She was so beautiful. As she placed the completed hearts back in her jar, she turned and stopped. She caught me watching. Her gaze softened. She opened her mouth to say something when the knob on her door began to turn. Her eyes widened and she flicked her hands in a shooting motion. As I jumped from the window and ran from the house, I heard her laughter following behind. Only something that pure could chase away the darkness in my heart. I had barely made it back through my window before I had to jump in the shower for school. The steam billowed around the bathroom as I stood under the hot spray. I leaned forward, the powerful jets pelting water onto my head. My hands rested against the slick tiles in front of me. Every day when I woke, anger consumed me. It was so consuming that I could almost taste its bitterness on my tongue, feel the heat of its coursing through my veins. But this morning was different. It was Poppy. Lifting my head from the water, I switched it off and grabbed my towel. I slipped on my jeans and opened the bathroom door. My papa was standing in the doorway of my room. When he heard me behind him, he turned to face me. "Morning, Rune," he greeted. I pushed past him to walk to my closet. I grabbed a white t-shirt and pulled it over my head. When I reached for my boots, I noticed my papa was still standing in the doorway. Stopping mid-motion, I met his eyes and snapped. "What?" He edged into the room, holding a coffee in his hand. "How was your date with Poppy last night?" I didn't respond. I hadn't told him anything about it, which meant my mama had. I wouldn't answer him. The prick didn't deserve to know. He cleared his throat. "Rune, after you left last night, Mr. Litchfield came over to see us." And then it came back, rushing through me like a torrent, the anger. I remembered Mr. Litchfield's face as he opened the door last night, as we drove away out of the street. He was pissed. I could see he hadn't wanted Poppy to come with me. Hell, he looked like he was 1 second away from forbidding her to go. But when Poppy walked outside, I could see that he wouldn't say no to whatever she wanted. How could he? He was losing his daughter. It was the only thing that stopped me from saying exactly what I thought of his objection to her being with me. My papa walked to stand in front of me. I kept my eyes to the floor as he said, "He's worried, Rune. He's worried that you and Poppy getting back together might not be such a good thing." I gritted my teeth. "Not good for who? Him? Poppy, Rune, you know. You know she doesn't have long." I whipped my head up, rage burning in my stomach. "Yeah, I get that. It's not too hard to forget, you know. The fact that the girl I love is dying." My papa paled. "James just wanted Poppy's final days to be trouble-free, peaceful, enjoyable, no stress. And let me guess, I'm trouble, right? I'm that stress?" He sighed. "He asked that you stay away from her. Just let her go without a scene." "Not happening." I bit out, grabbing my backpack off the floor. I slid my leather jacket on the walk and walked on around him. "Rune, think of Poppy," my papa pleaded. I stopped dead and turned back to him. "She's all I'm thinking of. You have no idea what it's like for us. So how about you stay the hell out of my way and out of my business? James Litchfield, too." "She's his daughter," my papa argued, his voice sterner than before. "Yeah," I argued back, "and she's the love of my life, and I'm not walking away from her, even for a second. And there's nothing either of you can do about it." I stormed through my bedroom doorway as my papa shouted, "You're not good for her, Rune. Not like this, not with all this smoking and drinking, your attitude, the chip on your shoulder about everything in your life. That girl worships you, she always has, but she's a good girl. Don't be her ruin." Stopping in my tracks, I glared at him over my shoulder and said, "Well, I have it on good authority that she wants a little more bad boy in her life." With that, I pounded past the kitchen, only briefly looking at my mama and Alton, who waved at me as I passed. I slammed the front door and walked down the steps, lighting a smoke as soon as I hit the grass. I leaned back against the railings of our porch. My body was like a live wire at what my papa had said, at what Mr. Litchfield had done, warning me off his daughter. What the hell did he think I was going to do to her? I knew what they all thought of me, but I would never hurt Poppy. Not in a million years. The front door of Poppy's house opened. Savannah and Ida rushed through, Poppy following right behind. They were all talking at once. Then, as if feeling my heavy gaze, Poppy's eyes drifted to the side of my house and focused on me. Savannah and Ida looked over at what held her attention. When they saw me, Ida laughed and waved. Savannah, like her daddy, stared at me with quiet concern. I flicked my chin at Poppy, telling her to come over. Poppy made her way to me slowly, Ida and Savannah on her heels. She looked beautiful, as always. Her red skirt came to mid-thigh, black tights covering her legs, small pixie boots on her feet. Her navy coat was covering her top half, but I could just see her white shirt underneath, a black tie around the collar. She was so damn cute. Poppy's sisters dropped back as Poppy stood in front of me. Needing to reassure myself that I had her, that she had me, I pushed myself off the railing, throwing my smoke to the ground. Cupping Poppy's cheeks with my hands, I pulled her to my lips, crashing my mouth to hers. This kiss wasn't gentle. I hadn't planned it to be. I was branding her, marking her as mine, and me as hers. This kiss was a strong flick of the middle finger to anyone who tried to get in our way. When I pulled back, Poppy's cheeks were flushed and her lips wet. That kiss better be going in your jar, I warned. Poppy nodded, dumbstruck. Giggles came from behind us. When I looked, Poppy's sisters were laughing. At least Ada was. Savannah was pretty much just gasping. Reaching down for Poppy's hand, I clasped it in mine. You ready? Poppy stared at our hands. We're going to school like this, I frowned. Yeah, why? Then everyone will know. They'll all talk, and I smashed my lips to hers again. And when I pulled back, she said, So let them talk. You never cared before. Don't start now. They'll think we're boyfriend and girlfriend again. I scowled. We are, I said plainly. Poppy blinked and blinked again, then extinguishing my anger completely. She smiled and fell into my side. Her head rested on my bicep. Looking up, she said, Then yes, I'm ready. I let myself hold Poppy's gaze for a few seconds longer than normal. Our kiss may have been a middle finger to anyone who didn't want us together, but her smile was a middle finger to the darkness in my soul. Poppy's sisters ran to our side and joined us as we started walking toward our schools. Just before we turned toward the Blossom Grove, I glanced back over my shoulder. Mr. Litchfield was watching us go. I stiffened when I saw the stormy look on his face, but I gritted my teeth. This was one fight he was definitely going to lose. Ida chatted the entire way to her school, Poppy laughing fondly at her younger sister. I understood why. Ida was a miniature Poppy, even down to the dimples on her cheeks. Savannah was a different personality altogether. She was more introverted, a deep thinker, and clearly protective of Poppy's happiness. With a quick wave goodbye, Savannah left us to go into the junior high school. As she walked away, Poppy said, She was real quiet. It's me, I replied. Poppy looked at me, shocked. No, she argued. She loves you. My jaw tensed. She loves who I used to be, I shrugged. I get it. She's worried I'll break your heart. Poppy pulled me to stop beside a tree near the entrance of our school. I glanced away. What's happened? She asked. Nothing, I replied. She stepped into the path of my stare. You won't break my heart, she stated with 100% conviction. The boy who took me to the creek and then to listen to an orchestra could never break my heart. I remained silent. Plus, if my heart breaks, so does yours, remember? I huffed at the reminder. Poppy pushed me until my back was against a tree. I saw students beginning to enter the school, most of them looking at us. The whispers were already beginning. Would you hurt me, Ron? Poppy demanded. Defeated by her tenacity, I placed a hand on the nape of her neck and assured her, never. Then to hell with what anyone else thinks. I laughed at her fire. She smiled and put her hand on her hip. How was that for attitude? Bad girl enough? Taking her by surprise, I spun her until her back was against a tree. Before she had a chance to argue, I closed in and kissed her. Our lips were slowly moving. The kiss was deep, Poppy's lips parting to let in my tongue. I tasted the sweetness in her mouth before pulling away. Poppy was breathless. Combing through my damp hair with her fingers, she said, I know you, Ruin. You wouldn't hurt me. She scrunched her nose and joked, I bet my life on it. An ache tried to form in my chest. That wasn't funny. She held her finger and thumb about an inch apart. It was a little bit. I shook my head. You do know me, Poppy. Only you. For you only. Poppy studied me, and maybe that's the problem. She concluded, maybe if you let other people in, maybe if you show those you love that you're still you underneath all the dark clothes and broodiness, they wouldn't judge you so harshly. They'd love you for whoever you chose to be, because they'd see you, your true soul. I stayed silent. Then she said, like Alton. How is your relationship with Alton? He's a kid, I replied, not understanding what she meant. He's a little boy who worships you, a little boy who's upset you don't speak to him, or do anything with him. I felt those words tunnel a pit into my stomach. How do you know? Because he told me, she said. He got upset. I pictured Alton crying, but I quickly chased it away. I didn't want to think of it. I may not have much to do with him, but I didn't want to see him cry. There's a reason he has long hair, you know. There's a reason he pushes it from his face like you do. It's real cute. He has long hair because he's Norwegian. Poppy rolled her eyes. Not every Norwegian boy has long hair, Rune. Don't be silly. He has long hair because he wants to be like you. He imitates your habits, your idiosyncrasies. Idiosyncrasies. Because he wants to be like you. He wants you to notice him. He adores you. My head dropped to face the ground. Poppy guided it back with her hands. She searched my eyes. And your papa, why don't you? Enough, I sputtered harshly, refusing to talk about him. I would never forgive him for taking me away. This one topic was off limits, even for Poppy. Poppy seemed neither hurt nor offended by my outburst. Instead, all I saw was sympathy in her face. I couldn't bear that either. Taking her hand, and without another word, I pulled her toward the school. Poppy gripped my hand tightly when other students stopped looking and started staring. Let them stare, I said to Poppy as we entered the school gates. Okay, she replied, and edged closer to my side. When we walked into the hallway, I saw Deacon, Judson, Jory, Avery, and Ruby all gathered near their lockers. I hadn't spoken to any of them since the party. None of them knew of this development. It was Jory who turned first. Her eyes widened when her gaze fell to Poppy's and my giant hands. She must have said something under her breath, because in seconds, all our friends turned to look at us. Confusion was all over their faces. Turning to Poppy, I urged, "Come on, we better speak to them." I moved to go forward. When Poppy pulled me back, "They don't know about," she whispered, for only me to hear. "No one does except our families and the teachers, and you." I nodded slowly. Then she said, "And Jory. Jory knows too." That bit of information slammed into my gut. Poppy must have seen the hurt on my face, because she explained, "I needed someone, Rune. She was my closest friend, except for you. She helped me with schoolwork and things like that. But you told her, not me." I said, fighting the urge to walk away and get some air. Poppy held on tightly to me. "She didn't love me like you did, and I don't love her like I love you." As Poppy said those words, my anger faded. "And I don't love her like I love you." Stepping closer to Poppy, I wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "You're going to find out at some point, but not yet," she said firmly. I smirked at the determination in her eyes, but not yet. "Rune, get the hell over here. You got some explaining to do." Deacon's loud voice rang out over the bustle of the hallway. "You ready?" I asked Poppy. She nodded. I stared us to meet our group of friends. Poppy's arm was wrapped firmly around my waist. "So you're back together?" Deacon asked. I nodded, my lip curling in disgust as Avery's face beamed with jealousy. Clearly seeing me notice, she quickly assumed her usual cynical mask. I didn't care. She was never anything to me. "So it's Poppy and Rune together again," Ruby clarified. "Yes," Poppy confirmed. Smiling up at me, I kissed her forehead, holding her close. "Well, it seems the world has right itself again," Jory announced, reaching out to squeeze Poppy's arm. "It wasn't right, y'all not being together. The universe just felt off." "Thanks, Jory," Poppy said, and they held each other's gaze for a second longer, communicating in silence. I noticed Jory's eyes begin to water. As they did, she exclaimed, "Well, I gotta get to class. I'll catch y'all later." Jory walked away. Poppy moved to her locker. I ignored all the stares. When Poppy had retrieved her books, I backed her against the closed door and said, "See, it wasn't so bad." "Not so bad," Poppy echoed, but I saw her watching my lips. Leaning in, I pressed my chest against hers and took her mouth with mine. Poppy whimpered when my hand dropped to her hair, clasping it tight. When I pulled back, her eyes were bright and her cheeks were flushed. Kiss 360. Against my locker door at school, showing the world we're together again, and my heart almost burst. I moved away, leaving Poppy to catch her breath. "Rune," she called as I headed to my math class. I turned and flicked my chin. I'm gonna need more of these moments to fill my jar. Heat speared through me at the thought of kissing her at every opportunity. Poppy flushed at the intensity of my face. Just as I turned again, she called, "And Rune?" I smirked and answered, "Yeah?" "Where's your favorite place to go here in Georgia?" I couldn't quite make out the expression on her face, but something was going on in that head of hers. She was planning something. I just knew it. "The Blossom Grove, when it's spring," I replied, feeling my face soften just at the thought. "And when it's not spring?" she probed. I shrugged. "The beach, probably." "Why?" "No reason," she trilled, then headed into the opposite direction. "See you at lunch," I shouted. "I gotta practice my cello," she shouted back. Standing still, I told her, "Then I'll be watching." Poppy's face brightened and she repeated gently, "Then you'll be watching." We stood on opposite sides of the hallway, just staring. Poppy melted for infinity, and I melted back forever always. The week passed in a blur. I'd never cared about time before, whether it went fast or slow. Now I did. Now I wanted a minute to last an hour to last a day. But despite my silent pleas to whoever the hell was up there, time was rushing by too fast. Everything was moving too damn fast. At school, the collective interest at me and Poppy being back together settled down after a few days. Most people still didn't get it, but I paid that to no mind. In our little town, I knew that people talked. Most of the gossip was about how and why we got back together. I didn't give a damn about that either. The doorbell rang as I lay on my bed, and I rolled to a stand. Grabbing my jacket off my chair, Poppy was talking about me. Taking me out. She was taking me out. This morning when I left her bed, she told me to be ready for 10. She wouldn't tell me why or what we were doing, but I did as she asked. She knew I would. As I walked out of my door and down the hallway, I heard the sound of Poppy's voice. "Hey, little man, how are you doing?" "Good," Alton replied shyly. Rounding the corner, I stopped when I saw Poppy crouching down to meet Alton's eyes. Alton's long hair was shielding his face. I watched as he nervously pushed his hair from his face with his hand, just like I did. Poppy's words from last week came crashing into my mind. "He has long hair because he wants to be like you. He imitates you, your habits, your idiosyncrasies. Because he wants to be like you, he wants you to notice him. He adores you." I watched my baby brother rock shyly on his feet. I couldn't help curling my lip in amusement. He too was quiet, like me. Didn't really speak unless he was spoken to first. "What are you up to today?" Poppy asked him. "Nothing," Alton replied sullenly. Poppy's smile faded. Alton asked, "Are you going out with Rune again?" "Yeah, baby," she replied quietly. "Does he talk to you now?" Alton asked. And I heard it. I heard the tone of sadness in his quiet voice, the one that Poppy had told me about. "Yeah, he does," Poppy said, and, like she did to me, she ran her finger down his cheek. Alton dipped his head in embarrassment, but I caught a little smirk through the gaps in his long hair. Poppy looked up and saw me leaning against the wall. Watching intently, she slowly straightened, and I walked forward, reaching for her hand and pulling her forward for a kiss. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded my head, eyeing her suspiciously. You still not telling me where we're going?" Poppy pursed her lips and shook her head, teasing me. She took my hand in hers and led me out the door. "Bye, Alton," she called over her shoulder. "Bye, Poppyman. I heard him say quietly in response. I came to a dead stop as my pet name for Poppy left his lips. Poppy's hand went over her mouth, and I saw her practically melting, melting on the spot. She stared at me, and in that stare, I knew she wanted me to say something, something to my brother. Sighing, I turned to Alton, and he said, "Bye, Poppy's hand squeezed mine, urging me to respond. "Bye, Alt," I replied, awkwardly. Alton's head lifted, and a huge smile spread on his lips, all because I said bye. The smile lighting up his face made me something tighten in my chest. I led Poppy down the steps and toward Poppy's mama's car. As we reached the car, Poppy refused to release my hand until I looked up at her. When I did, she tipped her head to the side and declared, "Rune Christiansen, I'm real freaking proud of you right now." I glanced away, not comfortable with that kind of praise. With a heavy sigh, Poppy finally released my hand and we climbed into the car. "You going to tell me where we're going yet?" I inquired. "Nope." Poppy backed the car out of the drive. "Though, you'll guess soon enough." I tuned the radio to Poppy's usual station and sat back in my seat. Poppy's soft voice began to fill the car, singing along to another pop song I didn't know. It wasn't long before I stopped watching the road and simply watched her. Like when she played the cello, her dimples deepened as she sang along to her favorite songs, smiling through the lyrics she loved. Her head swayed and her body moved in time to the beat. My chest constricted. It was a constant battle. Seeing Poppy so carefree and happy filled me with the brightest of lights. But knowing these moments were limited, finite, running out, brought only darkness, patches of pitch black, and anger. The ever-present unwound coil of anger that waited to strike. As if she could see me breaking, Poppy stretched out her hand and laid it on my lap. When I glanced down, her hand was palm up, her fingers ready to intertwine with mine. I let out a long exhale and slipped my hand through hers. I couldn't look at her. I wouldn't do it for her, to her. I knew how Poppy felt. Even though cancer was draining her life, it was the pain of her family members and those who loved her that was killing her. When I got quiet, when I got upset, it was the only time her bright green eyes would dim. When I let the anger consume me, I could see the tiredness on her face. Tired of being the cause of so much hurt. Keeping her hand tightly in mine, I turned to look out the window. We drove along the twists and turns out of town, bringing our joined hands to my mouth. I pressed kisses to Poppy's soft skin. When we passed the sign for the coast, the heaviness lifted from my chest, and I turned to Poppy. She was already smiling. "You're taking me to the beach," I stated. Poppy nodded her head. "Yep, your second favorite place." I thought of the cherry blossom in bloom in the grove. I envisioned us sitting under our favorite tree, and unlike me as it was, I sent a prayer that she would make it that long. Poppy had to see the trees in their full flower. She simply had to hold on that long. "I will," Poppy suddenly whispered. I met her eyes and she squeezed my hand like she was hearing my solemn plea. "I'll see them. I'm determined." The silence stretched out between us. A lump lodged in my throat as I silently counted the months to when the trees would be in blossom. About 4 months, no time at all. Poppy's hand had become rigid. When I searched her face, I saw the pain again, the pain silently telling me that she was hurting because I was hurting. Forcing the lump aside, I said, "Then you will. God knows not to stand in your way when you're determined." And like a switch, her pain faded and pure happiness shone through. I settled back in my seat, watching the world outside flash by in a blur. I was lost in my own thoughts when I heard, "Thank you." It was a tiny sound, barely a fraction of a whisper, but I closed my eyes, feeling Poppy's hand relax. I didn't respond. She wouldn't want me to. Another song began on the radio, and like nothing had even happened. Poppy's soft voice filled the car, and it didn't let up. For the remainder of the journey, I held onto her hand as she sang, making sure I drank in every note. We're going to leave it out there for this video, but I hope to see you in the next video as well. Bye for now.